Hello everyone, welcome back to the Mentoring Diaries. I am Dr. Tuba Ansari. Today's conversation is one I've generally been thinking about because we're exploring mentorship through a lens that carries immense depth, discipline, and human resilience, the armed forces. When we think about the military, we often think about structure, leadership, courage, and service. But what many people may not fully see is the role mentorship plays behind all of that. It becomes a way of shaping character, mindset, emotional strength, and trust. And what I find especially meaningful is that the lesson learned through military mentorship don't remain limited to life in uniform. They continue to shape how people lead, adapt, make decisions, and support others long after they transition into civilian life, education, or corporate environment. And that's exactly what we're exploring today. I'm truly honored to welcome Colonel Venkatraman to this conversation. It's wonderful to have you with us. I would love to begin by inviting you to share a
Thank you.
little about your journey and your experience with mentorship in the armed forces.
Thank you so much, Tuba. Thank you for having me here. And it's a great experience that I'm having here. As regards my journey in the armed forces, it's been a long journey. It's about 25 years to be exact, and almost 20 years ago. To keep it short, I joined the NDA as a trainee in the year 1978. And then I graduated from the National Defense Academy, Khadapasla in 81. I went to the Indian Military Academy, Dehradun, for a year's army training, intensive training, and then finally got commissioned in 82. So from 82 to 2007, I was in the armed forces as an engineer officer. We call it sappers. A sapper is a person who conducts engineering tasks, combat engineering tasks. For most of the time, I was a combat engineer. And when I was a combat engineer, I was in an engineer regiment. We had 205 men in our field company. I was the company commander in that as a part of the regiment, and all the men were under my command. Having said that, of course, we had captains, we had second in command, and we had platoon commanders. But then my direct mentoring was with anybody and everybody in the company, because I could approach. In the army, it's not like you're allotted a mentee. In the army, because you are the whole and soul for them, everybody's your mentee. And so it was a wonderful experience in the sense that you have to make them willing to die. And that kind of mentorship is very difficult.
So, on a personal note, sir, I have always been very fascinated with the army background, and today's conversation is something which is very much close to my heart because, being so much fascinated with this particular background, and then talking about mentoring, as you mentioned the word that it's a different kind of mentoring because it's about asking, making someone willing to die for the country. So obviously the entire, I'm sure the entire skills that goes in this is not as easy as mentoring a normal civilian. That brings
Absolutely.
me, to my first question, and I obviously I know it's a very difficult one. So, from your perspective, how does mentoring in military environment differ from mentoring in other settings?
Nice. So, of course, I think I've already partially answered it. But uh, as an army officer, you wear 3 stars or an Ashoka. You've got a lot of power in your hands. And that power comes from your appointment, your rank. And because the discipline is so strong in the armed forces, your men have to obey you in the sense they show tremendous respect. And I'll give you a small instance. Um, if I have to tell my Subedar something, to do something, I just tell him once and forget about it. That's how it is in the army. So I would go to the extent of saying sometimes mentoring is very easy. It's very easy to convince people in the army to do something because they are ready to do anything for you. It's like that. Having said that, of course, a raw recruit coming and getting trained in the regiment and becoming a soldier, it's a big transition. Just like we took 4 years to transition from a raw youngster to a officer. What they do is they go to their centers. They spend about 6 months in the center, and then from the regimental centers, they are sent to the units called the regiments. Now, it is in the regiment where actually they are trained, because that is where we make them do rifle training, firing, grenade firing. And so just a small example of how difficult sometimes it is to mentor somebody uh, and convince that person, uh, guide that person to doing something to perfection. So I'll give you a small story that I was at a grenade range. A grenade range is a place where we fire or we practice firing of grenades. So there's a proper drill. We hold the grenade in our hand. We pull the pin with the other hand. We say one, two, three, and then we throw it. And we are supposed to throw it from a bunker. That's the drill. And we practiced it several times. Now, the main challenge comes when these men come from the center, and especially there are some people who are called combatized tradesmen, CTs. They are actually supposed to be combatized, but they hardly ever hold the rifle because they practice such professions such as barber, dhobi, these kind of. They are the kind who actually help in the administration. So there's very little soldiering that they actually do, and they are terrified, to be very honest. Some of them, of course, make excellent soldiers, but initially, because it's not their, they've not been really trained to be soldiers as such, in the sense as much as the other soldiers. So mentoring them, training them is really, really a big challenge.
That actually connects me back because I know that you come from an experience from armed forces, then shaping into corporate and university side of civilians.
Yes,
And as you
coming,
mentioned,
yeah, of
mentioned,
course,
mentioned that it is easy because you command and they listen. And you don't have to follow up back with them. You just say and they have to listen. It's like more like
absolutely.
a thing written on the stone in the armed forces, but it's exactly the opposite when it comes to civilian
Absolutely.
world. So,
So
if
again,
you can share some
yes,
example around that or maybe your experience.
I'll do that. So I left the army in 2007, and the day I left the army, the next day I joined a company and as a senior manager, and literally it was a culture shock. Like I said, you tell your subedar something and forget about it, but here you tell your junior something, and you have to remind him thrice, and that too in a very polite and pleasing manner. If I had been in the army, I would have given a couple of what. So that's how it is. And initially, you don't know what the hell is happening. Then you tend to realize, okay, okay, it's like this. You've got to be extremely flexible when you enter the industry from the army, because you've been kind of hammered into a one kind of a life. To unlearn that becomes really difficult sometimes. Having said that, I've done a fair amount of mentoring. I was in the HR. I was lucky to be in HR also, in a hospitality company. And there in fact, I've been head training also. So I've done a lot of mentoring. I've done train the trainers sessions also. There in the industry, since you're dealing with mature persons who have a mind of their own, as one might say. So you have to be patient and convincing. Then we come to the third category, which is the student. I again have had a tremendous amount of experience. I must have mentored at least 2,000, 3,000 students in the last 18, 19 years, because I've been a visiting or a full-time faculty in management institutes. There it's a totally different ball game, because they're youngsters, 18-year-old, 20-year-olds, and yes, they are graduates, but they're still, you know, not so mature, and they've got their own ideas on what to do, what to become. They're not clear, firstly, on where to go. They just many of the time they're just following the herd, and at such times it's very difficult, or it becomes a challenge to be able to tell a person exactly what they need to do. Sometimes they don't listen. The herd mentality is so strong. I can give you an example of a student who literally, we had a tough time convincing her, and she actually started crying. She burst out crying. uh, we didn't want her to go to finance because her maths was poor, and the reason why she wanted to go to finance was because her best friend was in finance. So it becomes that difficult, you know.
Yeah, that's a very common thing that you see amongst youth,
Yes,
that
yes.
just because my
So
friend's joining something else, I want to join that.
we
But
had to call the parents actually and
Mhm.
convince them. Then they
But
agreed.
have you seen something like this in the armed forces when youngsters join that, and just because my friend joined army, so even I'm joining army. Have you seen that kind of a thing in army also?
As far as youngsters who join the army, since most of them join from the NDA or join the NDA, majority of those joining the NDA come from either Sainik schools or from Rashtriya Indian Military Colleges, RIMCs, or King George Military College. So they already have a military background. It's only very rare people like me who never had any experience in the army who, who get into the army. Mine was pure destiny, nothing else.
That's
And
a
the
very
adjustment was very difficult. The first 1 week was terrible, horrible. That's the only word I can describe. Military training is tough. There are no two words about it.
no, definitely, sir. And that brings me to my next very important question, that how are trust and accountability developed through mentorship in the armed forces?
Oh, yes, trust and accountability, two very important words. Very important words for people, but very, very important words for soldiers. So, trust comes in the army through personal example. There is no other way for a leader to build trust in in his soldiers unless you have to lead from the front. You have to have that integrity. Unless you have that integrity, unless you do the right thing when nobody is looking at you, people are not going to follow you. Your men may salute you in front of you, but true respect you will gain only when you do what is expected of you and sometimes more of what is expected of you. Simple example I can give you. When I was in the regiment, we were playing games. So I was naturally the captain of the team, de facto. We were playing hockey, and my team was kind of listless in its performance in the first half. So then the commanding officer called me and he gave me a little uh, dressing down and he said, Venkat, unless you score a goal, they're not going to do anything. So as soon as the whistle blew in the second half, within the next 5 minutes, I scored a goal. And then you should have seen 4 goals came after that. So that's
That's
how it is.
yeah. So it's more leading by setting yourself as
By
an example.
example. Absolutely. That is.
That
And accountability, of course. The buck stops at your shoulder, at least for a leader, for a officer. You can't transfer that responsibility to anybody else. And it's just not possible because, giving another example, I was in Sikkim in high altitude, and I was looking after I had about 30 men under me. We were doing some very important tasks there. So literally, I used to be like, God for them because uh, there was nobody else that they could look up to. And when that happens again, that accountability, I feel very strong that uh, if something happens, I am responsible. In fact, a driver, when we were driving down, because of, it slipped in the water, it was raining, and he's damaged the vehicle. But I took the responsibility on myself. I said, look, I was talking to him, so his uh, concentration went off. That day he was saved. So accountability does not really mean that you save somebody, but you take responsibility for your entire team, whatever happens.
So it's about true leadership. I mean,
Yes,
leading them by setting an example and also being a
absolutely.
part of, in the entire course. And I mean, accepting that if there is a failure, it's because of all of us, and it's not just one person
True.
who's being over there. That's I think
Yes,
that's a kind of a true mentorship that we actually lack in
absolutely.
today's world.
Yes.
Uh, and that brings me to another question. So from your experience, what are some of the most valuable lessons mentors in the armed forces pass on that stay relevant throughout their life?
Okay. Lessons that mentors pass on to others. The first, obviously, is to lead by example, just as we have already discussed. The second most important is that we are all in this together. That's very important. You have to make it clear to the team that, look, if we are going for a mission, it's all of us or none. You can't, you know, leave out somebody. I'll give you another example from my training days. We had an exercise. In fact, we had a camp in our fourth semester in NDA, fourth term, it's called there. And it's a very tough, grueling camp, 7 days. And then we run back. Okay, we run a distance of about 30 kilometers Whole night we are running with our packs and our rifle and everything. And we have to do navigation also, find our way out through villages in the pitch dark. So that's an exercise by itself. So during that time, you won't believe this. Uh, if at all somebody falls or slips and gets injured, we lift that person up and bring him back. There are three or four toughies in the team always who will lift that. And actually, it has happened. It's very common for somebody to carry somebody else's weapon also. So somebody carries two weapons, somebody carries three weapons. If that person is not running fast enough, the josh, as they say, the enthu to come first is so strong, and to get everyone together. That is another very important. So we are in this together. And the third is focus, is what you learn something in mentoring, that you can't lose sight of the goal at any cost. You have to. So many things may happen. There would be so many difficulties, but you got to climb that hill and reach the top, no matter what. Focus, determination. These are two things that go together. So, lakshya जिसे कहते हैं in Hindi. So you can't just lose it. These are some
That's
of
a
the things
very
which I remember.
powerful insight. I mean, that actually talks about how a person is actually, mentored in the armed forces. And it's not only, professionally, but also on the personal front. As you
Absolutely.
mentioned, the part where you have to be determined, focus, having, your
Yes.
goals very clear and stay very
Absolutely.
much focused and determined to that. I think that is very important because that something helps you beyond your life, in the armed forces.
Yes.
And another thing, I think many people can learn from military, mentorship is preparation for the uncertainty.
Oh
The world
yes.
today feels
Oh
increasingly
yes.
unpredictable for every one of us,
Oh
as we know.
yes.
So, how does mentorship in the armed forces help individuals prepare mentally and emotionally for uncertainty, pressure, and responsibility?
Wonderful question. So we are talking about VUCA, the corporate word for it. In fact, VUCA was coined by the American Armed Forces. So yes, VUCA is a nice word, but then when we go for an exercise, it's VUCA VUCA all the way. And we learn to take decisions with incomplete information because we can never get complete information. And we certainly don't have AI with us. So there's a lot of gut feeling involved in our decision making. And that comes primarily from experience also. But more importantly, leading under uncertainty is because the decisions have to be taken on time. There's no point in taking a late decision, even if it's a correct decision. Time is gone, it's gone. Your enemy has come already. What are you doing? So, time is of essence, and you have to take the decision at that time. And because time is so important, whatever information you have, take it. You are responsible. We learn to do it that way. And that is where we learn quickly how to take decisions under uncertainty.
I think that's a very important perspective that you've shared, and I feel sometimes people think resilience is all about becoming emotionally hard. But what military mentorship often teaches us is emotional steadiness,
Sorry.
ability to stay grounded and clear even during uncertainty, as you mentioned. And that feels incredibly relevant in today's world because I know with the kind of uncertainty that we all are going through.
Oh,
So,
yes.
let's talk about transition for a moment. Moving
Hmm.
from the armed forces into civilian or corporate life can be a major shift. I mean, because you spend like almost
Oh,
2 decades
yes.
in that
Oh, yes.
industry, culturally, emotionally, even professionally. So, how can mentors support that transaction, that entire transition effectively?
Great. Today, thanks to a lot of, I would say, officers now who have felt the need, the transition is much smoother than what it was during our days. Today, you have firstly the Army headquarters giving you a lot of IAM courses before you leave. That is one area where actual mentoring takes place. The second is there are a few very good, I would say, ex-army 4G groups or there are a couple of companies also, like M2C. You might have heard of Military to Corporate. It's a company, and they're even on LinkedIn. Their main job is that anybody who's retiring officers, they catch hold of him, contact him, and then prepare him for the industry. So they are the actual mentors, and they're doing a fantastic job. Believe me, I have some very good friends in M2C as well as in other similar groups. We have several WhatsApp groups also, and they're doing a yeoman's job. In fact, they are connecting these people to jobs in the industry. They're giving them jobs actually because they're feeding the industry with, and industry wants ex 4Gs because they know 4G can get the job done no matter what.
They're already a trained one.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm sure that transition can be deeply personal also at times, because how people move in from military to, a civilian one. So from your own experience, what mindset shift are necessary when moving from battlefield environment into boardrooms or education institutions?
Wonderful. In fact, this is the topic for my PhD, by the way. That my research involves two areas. One is what are the strong points, the strengths that army officers and men bring to the industry when they transition, and the second, what are the challenges they face. So both ways. Yes, certainly, strengths are tremendous, as you had just mentioned. Discipline is the first, integrity, working under stress, tremendous stress, uh, completing the task no matter what. All these are the pluses, and implicit obedience to command. Now, as far as the challenges are concerned, let me be very specific. The first challenge, as I said, is that you cannot order people around. It's as simple as that. And you can't expect people to just carry out your orders because you are an ex colonel or whatever it is. So some of them even ask me, sir, from colonel, when did you become captain? So it's like that. Uh, they are not even aware of the ranks very often, and therefore, what I meant is it doesn't mean anything to them being an ex colonel, and you have to accept that. You have to come down from your high horse, and you have to be able to uh, blend with what you, in fact, for that you have to first study what is really happening on ground. That's the first step. Be aware of what is happening, look around. Don't start assuming things. Don't assume that वहां ऐसे था तो यहाँ पे भी ऐसे होगा. So don't just imagine things. See for yourself what's happening. Talk to people, prepare yourself, and then move in slowly. And most important, flexibility. You've got to be flexible. You can't be rigid and say, no, I was like that, I'm not going to change. Then you are not fit for the industry. That's simpler.
So, something that I've been reflecting on is how relevant military mentoring principles feel in today's fast-changing world. So, how can this principle help professionals and young leaders navigate uncertainty and constant change today?
Military mentoring, of course, has its strengths because it is a very specific kind of mentoring meant for people who are in a very closed environment and who have a very focused task. So, whereas the industry is much more pervasive, it's huge, the scope is very, very wide. Therefore, I would say the kind of lessons you can learn from military mentoring is that you need to be able to, I would say, bring that motivation. You have to motivate people. You have to learn how to motivate people tremendously. The art of motivation you have to excel at. This is one area which I think I have learned because, like I gave you the example of the hockey match. So unless I scored a goal, they're going to just play okay. But the moment कैप्टन साहब ने गोल स्कोर किया तो फिर हमको भी करना है. That enthoo comes. So you have to motivate them. You have to lead by example. And you have to, yes, at all times you have to be aware that you cannot make a mistake. Sometimes, it's lonely at the top, and you have to understand as an officer, you have to be extremely careful that you don't do anything that can, bring down your guard. That is something you learn in the army. You can't afford to do it because once your men see you in that condition, you'll never recover from it.
So, being perfectionist is also very important at the top when you are in the armed forces.
Yes,
Right. And so
absolutely.
Yeah. So the kind of pace, that we are in today's world, I'm sure that the pace of the world may have changed, but principles like discipline, integrity,
Yes.
determination, and everything. I mean, the calm decision making that you have remains timeless. And mentoring helps people apply those principles in modern contexts. So you've mentored students, professional teams,
Hmm.
individuals across various, different sectors. Across all those experiences, what mentoring principles have remained constant throughout your journey?
The first principle I would say, which has remained constant, is that I need to have empathy. I need to understand that I'm doing it for this person. I need to understand that it's meant for his betterment, his or her betterment. It's not about me, it's about him or her. That is constant. That remains everywhere. This is one thing I am pretty clear about. The second is you cannot mentor people uh, in the same way. Every person is different. That is something again which is common everywhere. So you have to look at a person's uh, background, personality, and then mentor. One size does not fit all. This is another common lesson that I have learned in mentoring. And the third is keep patience, keep at it. It will happen anyways. Don't be in a hurry.
And while the environment may change, but I think the principle still remains constant,
Yes.
across. And finally, sir, if there's one lesson from mentorship in the armed forces that the world needs more of today, what would it be?
Camaraderie. I'll tell you, that is such a strong force, which is also a mentoring. Even today, I remember my senior subaltern. A senior subaltern is somebody, when you join the regiment, he's just a bit senior to you, maybe 6 months or a year senior. Maybe he's got 2 stars. He's a lieutenant, you're a second lieutenant. And he's like your buddy and he guides you. And the kind of mentoring he did for me, I know his name also, Hardeep Dhani. He's now a retired brigadier. But even today, I have such a lot of regard for him because he's the man who actually made me learn the ropes. And so uh, the camaraderie is very strong. Today, we are like friends. We are more like brothers, of course, with respect. 300 of us graduated from the NDA. All 300 are together today on a WhatsApp group. And even today, we talk to each other as if 45 years ago. That is the kind of comradeship, as you might call it.
That's
So,
really lovely, I mean, to be
yes,
connected in such a way with it last 45.
absolutely. That's awesome. And believe me, I go to Delhi, I don't have to tell anybody. I reach Delhi and call somebody and say, I'm coming to your place. That's it. It's like that.
So relationship building is one of the most powerful thing that has happened.
Very powerful. I mean, the kind of people are willing to do anything for you. Anything.
Beautiful. So this has been such a meaningful conversation. Let's move into a quick fireside round. Just the
Sure.
first thing that comes to your mind. One quality mentors in the armed forces build exceptionally well.
Mentors need to build a quality of integrity. Yes, that's the first word that comes to me. Because unless you are right, people are not going to follow you.
One lesson from military mentoring every young professional should learn.
Determination. You've got to keep at it. You've got to complete the task at any cost. That's one word that.
One trait that builds trust fastest in team.
Self example again. When you do it yourself, that's how you build trust. When you do what you say, when you don't just say, doing what you say.
One mistake people make when transitioning from out of the structured environment.
Being rigid, not changing easily, not being flexible. That's a big mistake they do.
One habit mentors should encourage early in life.
Be disciplined. Like that too, self-disciplined. You don't need somebody to keep telling you what to do. You got to grow up someday and say, this is good for me, so I need to do it. Self-discipline.
One thing the armed forces teaches, out about responsibility.
Yes, the army, like I said, we are all in it together. That's what the army
One,
teaches.
one mentoring principle that works everywhere.
Like I said, the mentoring principle that works everywhere is that You've got to keep at it until it's done.
One word that
Not giving up, being patient.
One word that defines mentorship in the armed forces.
Camaraderie, like I said.
So
While it is about guidance, it is more about being a brother officer. That's how it is.
Thank you so much for that insight. I think it has been a lovely conversation. Thank you, sir, for bringing not just your experience, but your wisdom and honesty into this conversation. One thing today's discussion reminded me of is mentorship in the armed forces is not only about preparing people for service, it's about preparing people for life. The ability to stay grounded under pressure, lead with responsibility, build trust, and continue growing through change. Those lessons remains valuable far beyond any profession or environment. And perhaps that's what makes mentorship so powerful. It shapes not just careers but character. If today's conversation gave you something to reflect on, take a moment with it. Change often starts quietly with a single thought and insight. At IMC, we are committed to creating a better world through the power of mentoring, one conversation, one connection at a time. Until we meet again, take care of yourself and each other. Thank you.